What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, a video was posted that showed off this new exploit that seemed to work across a number of different gaming platforms, which does include the Xbox 360 that is currently not able to be soft-modded, but this might actually open the door for that being a possibility, and we're going to go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about unfortunate news for another studio closing down. This one, though, would be a bit more familiar for people who are fond of the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 days. Then we'll also be taking a look at Sony's recent financial quarter that had all kinds of mixed reactions online just based on the number of PlayStation 5 systems that sold. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members of the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with a game called Balatro, which is a very unique title. It's basically like roguelike meets poker, and it's a game that you can beat pretty quickly, but then once you do, you're going to go through it over and over and over again. And I picked it up on a recommendation actually from the comments section, and it is actually really, really good. Like, the game itself is a lot of fun, and I understand why it is rated so highly online places like Metacritic. In fact, we can see this, actually it's posted up over on their official account. Two things here. One, they say the first major gameplay update is coming to Balatro in 2025. This update will bring new ideas and strategies to the game, and as a token of huge appreciation of the game's brilliant and passionate community, the update will be completely free. Also, get this, they announced that they're officially celebrating 2 million copies sold. I picked this up on the Switch, and I'm thinking about grabbing it on the PlayStation 5 as well and play it through the portal, maybe to collect some of the trophies for it. But like I said, the game itself is very, very addicting, and I do recommend checking it out just because it is a unique experience you're not going to get anywhere else, especially if you're just into cards in general, whether it's just like Texas Hold'em or poker. Certainly leans into that with the whole roguelike genre. Something really, really cool to see actually unfold on a system. Also, I did notice there was a really good Humble Bundle that popped up yesterday, and you can see it here. This is the Capcom Summer 2024 Game Bundle. In here, they have 12 different titles. It defaults to 35. You can move it to 30 though, as it's just, that's the same games you're getting. The 5 is just, I guess, just extra if you want to add it into the charity there, but the 12 games include Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, Capcom Fighting Collection, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Trilogy, Capcom Beat 'em Up Bundle, Dead Rising 4 Frank's Big Package, Street Fighter V Champion Edition, Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, Dead Rising 3 Apocalypse Edition, Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, Dead Rising 2 Off the Record, and Dead Rising 2. And you can see many of these are just, I think almost all of them actually, are all Steam Deck verified, and they all redeem through Steam. You can, of course, play them through Windows and stuff there, or just on your Steam Deck or other PC handheld. But what a really good bundle here at $30 for, I mean, think about it, a bunch of these games are also just collections of multiple games, so definitely a lot of value there. It popped up and I figured I would include it here just in case maybe people were picking up some of these handhelds and were looking into picking up things on Steam. The nice thing about PC games, of course, is typically you can find games super cheap, and this is definitely a bundle to look towards for that. Oh, and here's an interesting thing to go along with PlayStation VR 2 now being compatible with PC. It appears if you have the correct GPU on your desktop, you may not need that adapter box for it. In fact, we can see this actually over on Reddit as people were looking into this with that app now live on Steam, where they say if you have a 20 series NVIDIA GPU that has a USB-C port, you do not need the adapter. This is due to the PSVR 2 adapter using Virtual Link, which those GPUs already have. It was removed on the 3040 series, so for example, for me, I have a 3080 Ti, and it unfortunately would not work with that. But hey, if you have like I guess a 2080 or 2070, double check. You should have that USB-C port there with Virtual Link, and apparently it'll just work fine there. It's funny because we've been kind of waiting for this adapter to come out, and apparently this whole time people have had the port ready to roll. Of course, we were waiting for that application to be uploaded to Steam anyway to use it. So in that instance, we still had to wait for that official software to come out. But hey, if you have all these parts along with the PSVR 2 adapter, why don't you give it a try and let us know in the comments how it goes. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this new exploit that popped up online through way of a video on YouTube. And this is some very impressive stuff. I will link the full video down below in the sources, and I do recommend you check it out, especially if you're just interested in how all this comes together, as they do a very good job of explaining it. in layman's terms for basically 95% of us. But I did also link to GBA Temp that had a good write-up on it where they say, Grim Doomer posted a highly detailed blog that goes in depth on how it's a string copy bug works. So this is on Tony Hawk's Pro String Copy is what it's named. And they also mentioned how to execute it. They also released the exploit, available on GitHub, with versions that support Tony Hawk's American Wasteland for Xbox 360, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4 for the GameCube, Xbox, and PlayStation 2. Also noted that the PC version of Tony Hawk's Underground, which has a community built around a fan patch of the game and has network play, is also exploitable. And that players should be wary, which, yeah, there are always people out there who have malicious intentions, and this appears to be something that allows you to kick code back and forth on the network even, so keep that in mind. Now, they do mention here, if a new hypervisor bug is discovered, this can easily be paired with it to work on newer kernel versions, that being for the Xbox 360. They say they still have hope that there might be an exploitable bug that would get you hypervisor code execution on a new kernel version, but they highly suspect it would be some kind of CPU or MMU bug rather than a bug in the hypervisor code. So really the idea is it's sort of been opened up here. In fact, if you have an older dashboard, they showed it off with like the Blade system, you would be able to then use this to essentially soft mod and open up the system. However, I mean, no one really has Blade systems just laying around anymore since most people have updated it beyond that. However, the fact that this exploit has now been made public is so interesting just because it's something they've mentioned having just kind of at their disposal for a while now, and they feel like, let's put it out there and kind of move on from it. But it does work across so many different systems, and while many of these systems now, these game platforms, have other ways to soft mod the system, I mean, like with the PS2, if you just get a free McBoot memory card and pop it in, that's it, it's done. Or if you know someone who has a free McBoot memory card, they can just copy the file over and the PS2 is ready to roll. With the GameCube getting into Swiss, it's kind of the same deal there with a memory card that has the file or memory card to SD card, and we know all about the original Xbox. So that's one of the reasons many people were looking at this specifically for the Xbox 360 in hopes that they have cracked the code and there's a way to fully soft mod that system. The thing with this though is it's possible, because this is out there now, that more and more people look into what they have done with this Tony Hawk Pro Skater exploit and maybe try to build on that and work further on reverse engineering or just figuring out maybe a path to eventually soft mod the 360, because it is a system I think that needs that, since the advice that we pretty much give at this point is to reset, glitch, hack the system. And while it has become significantly easier, it's still not something that is as approachable as, hey, if you load up the creative part in Tony Hawk Pro Skater, hit a few buttons, it's just done and soft modded. You can then start loading up whatever dashboard you want and, of course, get all these Xbox Live arcade games rolling. But still, it was a lot of fun to see how they were able to figure this out. They also have an entire blog post that they wrote up on their site, kind of detailing this even further. So I recommend checking it out. And, of course, we'll all cross our fingers and hope that someday the Xbox 360 is a bit more approachable when it comes to the mod scene. Next up, let's talk about some unfortunate news around another studio closure. This one, though, is going to sound familiar to PlayStation fans, especially from the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 era. We can see this is posted up by Push Square, where they say, Ready at Dawn, the studio best known to PlayStation fans for the divisive PS4 exclusive The Order 1886, will be closed by Meta effective immediately. Android Central reports the closure is related to ensuring Reality Labs can stay within its budgetary constraints and make a better long-term impact on VR development, not to save money. Okay, so Ready at Dawn, they were founded back in 2003, so 21 years then of them developing games, which really started even back on the PSP with Daxter. They did God of War Chains of Olympus. They did the port for Akami to the Wii, but mostly they worked on a lot of Sony's devices, and then eventually the Oculus Rift. They do point out the Order 1886, which, yes, very divisive, and I don't think it lived up to maybe what Sony was looking for, as we started to learn that Sony was trying to find developers and studios that could make these blockbuster hits that would score high 80s, low 90s consistently. And that's also apparently one of the reasons that something like we saw Days Gone come out in an unfortunate state. Not great when it first released, took a lot to patch it, and that's why apparently we're not getting Days Gone 2. However, Sony Bend is at least still working on something. But Ever since the Order 1886, they kind of drifted around for a while working on the Oculus Rift. Eventually, they were picked up by Meta in 2020. They created Lone Echo 2 in 2021, which didn't go over well once again, and now they are shut down. And the thing that I think is going to get a lot of people is Shinobi shared this over on Twitter X saying, from what I knew, they had awesome plans in place for a sequel to The Order before Meta got them. With the engine already in place, which took up a ton of time and resources in the first one, they were going to put everything into the gameplay experience next. I bet we could have seen an Assassin's Creed to Assassin's Creed 2 level jump. Yeah, that one's gonna hurt a lot of fans of, if you were a fan of the Order 1886, to hear that you could have seen a jump similar to what Ubisoft managed with Assassin's Creed way back in the day, which Assassin's Creed 2 is significantly better than the first Assassin's Creed. It actually felt like a generational leap between the two games. Yeah, that one stings. It does. But in this case, it's pretty clear that if they had a lot of that figured out, they must have made the pitch to Sony. And so they was like, nah, I think we're good. The fact that they let this happen with Ready At Dawn, I think it was kind of a miss for Sony not to try to either acquire them or put them on a new contract that might make them less appealing to Meta to come in and pick them up, because we know with these studios that get acquired, usually contracts have to be fulfilled in some way before they're able to fully focus on whatever, say, Meta would like them to do. And also, when you're a studio that then works primarily on VR, as we are seeing now more than ever, your days are kind of numbered. It's like an uphill battle the whole way. So the fact they're owned by Meta, we see VR really struggling right now. The writing's kind of on the wall. And it is sad to see that happen for Ready At Dawn, because in an alternate timeline, maybe they came out with the follow-up to Order 1886. It was incredibly successful, and then Sony maybe picked them up as a PlayStation Studios. But I do think Ready At Dawn was a very talented studio back then, and it just, unfortunate events didn't work out. They ended up with Meta, and now they're pretty much gone after 21 years. Next up, let's talk about Sony's recent financial report. This would cover Q1 of their current fiscal year. So as we've been talking about with many companies recently, April, May, and June. This did give us an update on how many PlayStation 5 systems they were able to sell in that time frame, and of course gave us an update for the lifetime sales for the console. First though, we can see this is posted. This is over on install base forum, grabbing the important slide here for us with all of Sony's company Game and Network Services segment. Now we can see their sales were up 12% over last year's Q1, as well as their operating income being up 33%. So in terms of money coming in, things are looking good there. In fact, they do cite like their network services, microtransactions, PlayStation Plus, which PlayStation Plus in general, we know they made that big push when it comes to just the price of the subscription service, but they've also been growing it over time, so that makes sense why that would be up in terms of just revenue and operating income. Now, when we take a look at the hardware, it is down from Q1 of fiscal year 23. They moved 2.4 million PlayStation 5 systems. That is a drop off of 27% year over year. As for software, 53.6 million units moved, which is actually about a 5% drop from last year as well, although they haven't really have like massive software necessarily that people are talking about, especially when it comes to the first party side. And if you take a look at their full game software digital download ratio, currently coming in at 80%. That counts PS4 and PS5, of course, combined. But man, when you see that 80% digital ratio for full game, that is, it's not great. Again, for physical collectors, that is a tough number to see. Now, when it comes to their PlayStation Network, their number of monthly active users, 116 million versus last year's Q1, 108 million. And we know as we go towards the holiday season, that number does tend to tick up. So going from Q4 to Q1, dropping off 2 million, not as big of a deal. As I mentioned, we'll probably see a pretty big jump as we get into the holiday season. Now, all of this does amount to 61.7 million PlayStation 5 systems that they've managed to sell as of June 30th. That does place them behind the PS4 lifetime if you align them by about 1.5 million units. However, in the US, which we know is really a region that Sony is focusing heavily on currently, they are tracking ahead of the PlayStation 4. So it really just goes kind of region by region globally. I think it's going to be right there alongside of the PS4 for the majority of its life. Will it be able to outsell the PS4? That is a tough one, mostly because the PS5 is just a more expensive system at this time, and it hasn't had the price drop that the PS4 had when we had that PlayStation 4 Slim system that came in 3 years in, and they knocked like $100 off of it. Still, though, it does appear that Sony is continuing to sell relatively well for the PS5, since it doesn't have a hybrid like Nintendo does, where they've played into that form factor and with great results. Sony still does sell a $500 box that you put on your TV, and it is probably, at this time, if you look around, like the most traditional game system we have. I mean, Microsoft pushing cloud and away from the box itself for hardware. Sony is still sticking firm with that. So we'll see how this continues to treat them going forward for the generation. But I mean, think about it now. It's been pretty quiet from first party side, and we assume they're eventually going to wake up. And once they start getting a lot of these big first party titles rolling, and they have Grand Theft Auto 6 next year that, I know it's going to be on Xbox, but a lot of people are going to already look at Sony, the PlayStation, as their default system. I mean, GTA 6 is going to move many, many units for consoles because it's also not there on PC day one, and we assume there will be a PlayStation 5 Pro. So I think right now we're kind of at this, it sounds weird to say because we are declining technically in the generation, calm before the storm, first party storm, GTA 6 storm. I wouldn't be shocked if we see actually a bit of a jump in terms of units sold for consoles, which would kind of go against what we're typically used to with that normal bell curve for sales. But I think right now, based on where they are, it's okay. It's nothing jumping off the page, but it's also not like, oh, ring the alarm bells where they're in trouble. It's just kind of fine right there in the middle. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about WB and how they're apparently considering selling off stakes or portions of their gaming division. And this is coming off of some pretty rough financial reports. So for example, at this time, they've actually dropped 41% in terms of their gaming revenue year over year, which, I mean, they had Suicide Squad recently, and they're putting that up against Hogwarts Legacy. It's kind of like, what do you think's going to happen there? But still, this is all seemingly heading towards them maybe selling off portions of their division, which we can actually see this posted up. This is over on VGC, where they say Warner Bros. Discovery is reportedly considering selling a stake in its video games business. This is according to Financial Times sources, who claim the media giant is looking to offload smaller assets in an attempt to help reverse a near 70% decline in its stock price since Warner Media and Discovery merged in 2022. Now, of course, their gaming division includes Avalanche Software, Rocksteady, TT Games, NetherRealm, Monolith Productions, Warner Bros. Games Montreal, and some of the notable titles, I guess we could say recently, to attach these different studios. Hogwarts Legacy, which was a massive success for them, and then Suicide Squad and Gotham Knights, which are kind of the opposite end of the spectrum there. I guess Mortal Kombat with NetherRealm, that's been pretty good so far. It's Mortal Kombat 1. But still, it's definitely been hit or miss for Warner Bros. And the different games that they've released. I almost wonder if they would consider selling off just studios, or would they have just shares or just chunks of their division being sold off. It's really hard to say what they would do here. Some have wondered if they would just sell off the entirety of their gaming division. I don't necessarily know if that's the case, because while they're certainly having a harder time right now with Suicide Squad, I mean, Hogwarts Legacy was a resounding success for them, and they seem to be working, as you would assume, on a follow-up to that. So I don't know why they would all of a sudden jettison the whole thing if they have big plans for a release to follow up Hogwarts Legacy and probably make a ton of money. No, the thing I actually wouldn't be surprised is if they decide to, again, unfortunately, close down a studio or two. And I gotta tell you, looking at Rocksteady right now with like the founders having left and them just kind of in no man's land right now with Suicide Squad, it actually wouldn't surprise me if by this time next year we're talking about Rocksteady having closed down. And that sounds crazy, but what do you really do after Suicide Squad? Are you going to spend another potential 6 or 7 years working on a game that, I mean, with how WB has been going, would be live service with Rocksteady, who certainly doesn't seem to really be as into that sort of direction? Hard to say, but that would be something that wouldn't surprise me, I'll say. Otherwise, maybe they'll just spin off some of these studios, package them together, and sell it off to a big platform holder or a big publisher. So I guess we'll keep an eye on WB to see if they make any moves. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, which of these games in October are you most excited for? Yeah, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero leading the way. I'm a little surprised Silent Hill 2 is second, considering people seem very unsure of Bloober Team. Then we have Metaphor Re-Fantasio, Sonic Cross Shadow Generations, and then Call of Duty Black Ops 6. I saw some people mention Super Mario Party Jamboree, how that should have been there. That was actually the 6th option, so blame YouTube for not letting us have 6 options here. Also, I included that in a prior poll just as to which games coming out of that direct are you most excited for, so I thought I'd change it up here a bit and throw some other games up on the list here for October. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Pedro. It says, I think that shows that the generation should become longer now that the development time is so long. The devs can't make full use of the hardware like they used to back then on the PS2. It's been 10 years and devs still feel the PS4 is a viable platform. It'd be fine with delaying the PS5 a few years and getting a much more powerful hardware that the PS4 can't even get close to. So, you're right in the sense that development times become so long, we don't have the situation of even back on the 360 and the PS3, where one studio could make 3, even 4 games in that generation. It's just not the case anymore, right? Like it takes 6 or 7 years. That is a console generation to make one game that, by the way, is already a massive risk from the onset, especially if it's a new IP. So that is a good point. Maybe we should get to the position where a 10-year console cycle is the norm. And like a 12-year cycle is like, okay, we've been doing this for a while, right? Maybe we get rid of console generations altogether and it gets closer to like how you upgrade cell phones every other year if you want to, because otherwise it would work fine. But then also, aren't we just building PCs kind of, or buying PCs and they're just, maybe they can be modular? That starts to get a bit more complicated, I feel like, for the mainstream. So maybe just longer console generations might be the answer here, especially if we get to a point where development cycles take 10 years, guess what? That's just how long the console generation needs to be so we can actually fit these games in. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talk about here today. Where's the new exploit coming out of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series? Would you be interested if we eventually figured out how to soft mod the Xbox 360? Then also, what about Ready at Dawn closing down? Or are you someone who really liked The Order 1886, and then what we saw here so far was Sony's sales for the PlayStation 5 with 2.4 million sold. You think you're gonna be able to reach their 18 million goal for the rest of this fiscal year? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.